You're watching TelecomTV from the MEF 17 event in Orlando. And I'm joined now by Kevin O'Toole, who is SVP Product Management at Comcast Business. Kevin, thanks for joining us on TelecomTV.
Great to be here, great to be here.
Now, you were keynoting at the MEF 17 event this morning, and the topic you were talking about was this generational moment we find ourselves in. Why? What has happened? What has transformed? Why are we now looking at this specific moment in time?
What we see is a convergence of two fundamental changes. One, which a lot of people are talking about, is software-defined networking, which allows you to virtualize so many functions. I call software-defined networking the opportunity to end the tyranny of the boxes. You know, we live in a world today where there's a box for everything, every function has its box. And software-defined networking promises to reduce that complexity and allow things to be done virtually. Wonderful thing. Another key trend, and this is one that Comcast is at the center of, is actually the deployment of Gigabit broadband. And so we're now deploying a new set of technologies, and Comcast is very much at the forefront, but every major cable operator will be doing it, that allows a gigabit of bandwidth to be delivered transactionally to virtually every business and most homes in America and eventually around the world. When you can deliver a gigabit of bandwidth in the last mile for very low cost, it just changes how you architect things. And we think when you bring gigabit broadband together with SDN, there'll be so much changed over the next few years that we'll see it as a breakpoint moment in the industry, not dissimilar from the evolution from circuit to packet or narrowband to broadband. Gigabit and SDN combined, very powerful.
So part of the transformational process we're seeing carriers and operators go through this past few years, or not necessarily go through, but at least start thinking about. And is this something the industry must go through and must accomplish, otherwise people get left behind?
Yeah, you have to make the change because an industry can only handle so much complexity. And there's more complexity coming into the system being driven by thousands of devices trying to access hundreds of applications, bandwidth measured in gigabits, and you can't use old technologies to manage new complexity. So you have to simplify, and importantly, you have to take cost out of the infrastructure. So if you don't do those things, you're not going to be able to support your customers and what they need to do with their applications and devices. So I think this is a necessary journey. And one of the beauties of a world of competitive telecom is when someone goes, everyone else has to. You have to keep up with keeping things simple for customers, cost-effective, flexible. It's another great moment to be in the industry.
So all this complexity, all these devices, I guess this leads on to the need for automation, automated services, and we're hearing things like zero touch. Is this all part and parcel of the process, of the journey?
Absolutely. One of the things to bring reliability up, which is critical. I mean, it's easy to underestimate the importance of reliability in networks today. As everything has moved to the cloud, basically 100% of what a business does each day comes and goes from the cloud, which means 100% of their business rides over that network, rides over that last mile. You know, you're in a situation where if the network's down, people can't sell product, people can't conduct their business until the network comes back up. And so you have to take this journey to simplicity because that's part of reliability. When you have, you go into the back branch office of many businesses and you'll see a stack of boxes back there. Everyone has a power supply, everyone has a firmware upgrade, everyone has a security patch no one's touched in 6 months, and that complexity makes it very hard to keep reliability high. When you virtualize, so much complexity comes out, easier to deliver a reliable infrastructure.
Can I talk about SD-WAN for a moment? Why are we starting to see so much interest in this industry for SD-WAN services?
Right. It's fundamentally driven by a bit the forces I referenced before. Step one, broadband and now gigabit makes SD-WAN possible. It enables so much more in terms of bandwidth to the last mile, and it's a disruptive step away from legacy technologies like TDM and low bandwidth data services, that just the presence of the capability changes how people think, changes what's possible. And then you bring in that reality of cost and complexity and reliability, and you have to step away from these old T1 driven technologies. I think MPLS is showing its age. And so you bring these two forces together. SD-WAN is a natural byproduct of it, and it's just where the industry wants to go. Simpler, faster, cheaper. That's SD-WAN in a heartbeat.
You're closely involved with MEF, you're board member of MEF. The big announcement at this event has been MEF 3.0. Right. How does this impact our businesses?
MEF 3.0 is a fundamental recognition of this new world that we're in. You know, this is actually my second tour of duty on the MEF board. I was on a few years ago, and I can't imagine a better time to re-engage as a MEF board member MEF has done a phenomenal job for over 10 years in standardizing and helping the world get a reliable Metro Ethernet, carrier Ethernet infrastructure in place. This step from the MEF into more services, the step from the MEF into saying, hey, standards are important regardless of where you're operating in the stack. Interoperability is important regardless of where you're operating in the stack. Let's take those great MEF skill sets and apply them to software-defined WAN, lifecycle orchestration, interoperability, and all these software services. And standards and the kinds of standards MEF drives ultimately pull out cost because vendors and carriers are forced to compete on quality as opposed to some kind of lock-in from proprietary technologies. And it also drives up quality because it becomes easier to take different technologies, different carriers, plug them together, and avoid mistakes and complexity just because things are operating in a different way. So MEF is, as it did with Metro Ethernet, leaning right into this next generation of technology and going to leverage all those skill sets to go help standardize that part of the industry. It's a great step for MEF.
And you mentioned interoperability. We're also hearing about inter-operator interoperability, this east-west relationship. I guess the importance of this depends on your business model and what sort of telco you are. How important is it to Comcast?
I think it's going to be very important. You know, at the end of the day, customers are where they are. Customers do not wake up in the morning and choose their business locations based on where their network provider happens to build network. Would be lovely if they did, it's just not how the world works. And so we have to be where our customers are. And there's two ways to do that. One is to go over the top, which is actually a fundamental tenet of Comcast SD-WAN infrastructure, is we're over the top. But the other is to recognize that there are meet-me points between carriers. There are points where the customers say, I have services in carrier A, I have services in carrier B, help me stitch these things together. And it's not necessarily just the traffic. Help me stitch together security, help me stitch together policy management, help me stitch together ordering. Those kind of interoperabilities are in the best interest of customers and therefore in the best interest of service providers.
With all these technologies and services that we're putting, whether they're SD-WAN, SDN, NFV-based, as a service, on demand, do they help you gain more insight into your customers? It's like a feedback loop here. Are you getting a better understanding of your customers?
Anytime you can shorten cycle time, life gets better for everybody. And what a software-defined world does is it allows you to shorten cycle time from insight to execution to insight. It allows you to run network infrastructure on agile software models. That has never actually been possible in our industry before. In fact, quite the contrary, most network infrastructure was very long cycle time. When you can run things on an agile basis, you can not just solicit feedback directly from customers, you can actually watch in software how they use the product and realize this set of capabilities is more important to them. How do we know? Because they use it. And so let's make sure we highlight those capabilities, make it easier in the digital experience for them to take advantage of that capability. So yeah, we think this is an opportunity for a much more intimate relationship with our customers and really an opportunity to be very responsive in the market to what they're dealing with every day as they live through these technology transformations.
Great. Well, Kevin, thanks for talking with us on TelecomTV.
Appreciate it. It was a great time. Thank you.